Grand Portage Resources' Herbert Gold Project in southeast Alaska highlights increased gold resource, indicated and inferred, of 860,000 ounces, in excess of 10 grams per ton gold. Expansion drilling is planned on the Herbert Gold property for the summer of 2019. Grand Portage Resources trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Jordan Bateman, Vice President of Communications and Marketing for the Independent Contractors and Business Association. Welcome back to the show, Jordan.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
Jordan, in the midst of a federal election campaign, are you hearing or seeing anything that might be helpful for small business and medium-sized businesses that you represent?
Yeah, in dribs and drabs. Look, we're 20 days as we record this from the election. I don't think this has been the finest 15 days in Canadian political history since this campaign started. But, you know, once you cut through all of the, the blackface controversy and other things, there are some little nuggets of gold to pan at the bottom of the policy pans here. So, you know, one of the interesting things is, a discussion around how do you make Canada more attractive for investment. And this, of course, really starts everything off. And if you don't attract investment to Canada, then really you are limiting your economic growth and your ability to compete economically. So, you know, we were hoping for and expecting pretty broad visions from the major political parties on this. Well, what we've gotten is the Green Party essentially wanting to shut down the Canadian oil and gas industry, which would gut the economy and, frankly, plunge many Canadians into economic despair. We have the NDP who kind of want to do the same thing, but maybe leave LNG running because, you know, they feel like they owe John Horgan's version of the NDP at least that. With the Liberals, you have a bunch of deficit spending, which will actually weaken Canada's place economically, make us a less attractive place to invest money. Plus, you have their crazy, oil tanker bans, for example, with absolutely no scientific evidence that that's actually helpful to the sea life that they want us to help. They want to make it more difficult to build pipelines and other economic or energy infrastructure. So that's not very attractive. And then you have the Conservatives who at least want to get rid of those policies and have been looking at ways to cut taxes on smaller businesses, trying to find ways to incent innovation, and, you know, have used their climate change platform to really get into the idea of, you know, supercharging a clean economy through technology rather than through taxing the public. So, you know, you got to really sort through a lot of straw here in order to find some of these needles that would actually help business, help investors, and help job creators.
Do you think politicians understand that when you help business or small business, you're helping the section of the economy that creates 72% of the jobs?
I think intellectually they do. I don't think in the way they actually practice politics or their economic policies, they're even close to understanding how important it is. You know, it's interesting, right? Like Vaughn Palmer had an interesting piece in the Sun today about a company that is shutting down all its forestry operations here in British Columbia, pinning the blame on the BC NDP for a lot of the costs that have been heaped upon this company. But at the same time, they're investing tens of millions of dollars in a new set of sawmills in Virginia. And the truth is, Virginia is a more attractive place to invest. You don't have the employer health tax, you don't have the carbon tax, you don't have log tariffs, you don't have to deal with the red tape of the NDP, you don't have to deal with the red tape of the Canadian government. It is a lot more attractive. So instead of, you know, having tens of millions of dollars to put into the BC economy to keep people employed across the province, they're putting it into Virginia. And, you know, Vaughn Palmer writes this interesting thing, like, you know, he's probably not listening, but, you know, John Horgan, you should be paying attention to this. And really what Vaughn's trying to do is teach Economics 101 to a premier who doesn't seem terribly interested in noting it. So what we need to be doing is creating the kind of climate where you get not just the large investments, but the mid-sized investments to come to Canada, where you can have like the idea with a sawmill is, if you built a new mill, you built you build the LNG plant. The LNG plant is the largest investment in Canadian history. And yet yes, it's huge, but what people don't understand is it spins off thousands of jobs and billions in economic spin-offs for smaller and medium-sized businesses to help serve that plant as in its construction and its operation. So we need to be doing everything we can to wave a flag to the world saying, hey, Canada is a great place to put your money. We have a strong economy. We have a skilled workforce. We're smart. We're stable. Come invest here. And instead you get, basically politicians kind of looking down their nose at investment from other places.
Does Alberta have a better royalty rate for business when it comes to doing forestry?
I'm not sure about forestry, but certainly Alberta has a better. Alberta, the premier of Alberta is out there in New York City last week. He's, waving the flag for Alberta oil and gas, saying, "Look, come and invest here. We'll find a way. We will find a way to make your business successful here in Alberta. We want you to come here and spend your money. We want you to come here and employ our people. Let's talk." And you don't ever get that from John Horgan or Justin Trudeau.
We'll have more with Jordan Bateman right after the break.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Bateman Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Bateman's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at batemanresources.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Jordan Bateman. Jordan, at the start of the last election campaign, Justin Trudeau said, sure, we'll run deficits to start off, but by the end of our first term, we'll have a balanced budget. It's nowhere near that. What's the big fear? That the government will have to spend so much money servicing debt that it won't be able to actually run the programs it promised?
Yeah, and look, this isn't a problem that's going to crop up next year. The Canadian economy is in fairly good shape. Our debt numbers, while not great, are certainly better than a lot of jurisdictions. But it's the fact that the Liberals don't have a plan to ever get out of deficit. Year after year after year after year, they're planning deficit spending. And eventually that catches up to you. And we know this because we've done this before in Canada. Through the 70s and 80s, we piled on debt here in Canada through, deficit budgets year after year after year. And it took John Chrétien and Paul Martin in the 90s to bring an actual real spending cut to reset the whole thing and put us into the fiscal position we are today. So, what frustrates me about the Liberals is just the dishonesty of it all, right? We're going to, Justin Trudeau looking into the cameras in 2015 saying that our budget will be balanced by 2019. They didn't even try. They're not even close. It's going to get worse and worse. And the only thing consistent about the federal Liberals' management of spending is that they constantly overshoot their targets. They spend wild amounts of money, and right now they're in a fight for their political survival. They will spend every penny they have, every nickel they could possibly borrow, anything they can, in order to get Canadians to vote for them. So it's not great. Long term, this is going to come back to bite us. We need to at least be trying to get back to balanced budgets. The Liberals have put us into kind of a system of spending now where it'll be very difficult to do so in the next 2 years. But, what government has a plan to get us there in year 3 or year 4, we need to get back to balance because, we've run up a bunch of debt in the good times. The bad times are inevitably coming. Consumer confidence continues to fall. Recessionary signs continue to pop up on the radar. We are not in a great position to respond to that.
I've heard ads on the radio talking about the construction projects in BC, and I forget the particular name of the legislation, Fair Work or something, Are you behind those ads? And what is the concern? And is it called fair work? Again, I don't recall, but you know the term for it.
Yeah, I'm not sure what ads you're talking about. I do know the Progressive Contractors Association have an ad campaign going on around John Horgan's collective or community benefits agreements,
yes,
which is really just a fancy way of saying union-only monopoly. In construction in BC, 85% of construction workers are not represented by the traditional building trades unions. Only 15% count themselves as members of those traditional unions. Now, those unions give millions and millions of dollars, $2.5 million, in fact, over the past decade to the NDP. They provide them with countless hours of volunteer labor. They are really the heart and soul of the NDP government. So when the NDP got into power, they brought in a union-only monopoly. They looked at the landscape and said, geez, our unions are getting their butts kicked out there. We better give them something in order to keep them alive, or we're going to lose all our money and volunteers. So they brought in this union-only monopoly. They cut out 85% of the construction workers in this province. They cut out 82% of the apprentices in this province, who are sponsored by non-building trades unions. And they brought this together. So the Patello Bridge, the Broadway subway, the Highway 1 expansion in eastern British Columbia, that is all being done by union-only labor. If you're a non-union company and you win a contract there, you must fire your workers. You must hope they get rehired by a crown corporation run by the unions. And then you have to hope that crown corporation run by the unions reassign your workers to you. That, of course, won't happen. They'll assign their own union lackeys, flunkies, and the guys who grease the wheels within the union hall to make sure those guys are working first. PCA, Progressive Contractors Association, ICBA, my organization, we're in court. BC Construction Association, Chamber of Commerce, a bunch of groups trying to fight this because it absolutely discriminates against 85% of the workforce.
We'll have more with Jordan Bateman right after this.
Cypress Development Corp. is developing a world-class lithium resource in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. The size of the resource makes the Clayton Valley project a premier asset with the potential to impact the future of lithium supply. Cypress Development Corp. trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the OTCQB, symbol CYDVF, and on Frankfurt, symbol C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Jordan Bateman. Jordan, I think statistically BC has the best economy in the country, but do people who live in BC feel it that way?
I think people in BC are starting to look at the tea leaves and saying, yikes, what the NDP is doing is going to dramatically affect our economy in negative ways for years to come. So look, there's recessionary signs everywhere. Retail sales are now stagnant. Real estate sales are way down. The provincial government had to take back $300 million of its contingency budget just to stay balanced. Conference Board of Canada today has a report out talking about how British Columbia's confidence in the economy is the lowest it's been in 3 years. CFIB, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, survey their small business members every month. They're at a very low level, the lowest in Canada as far as confidence in the government goes. To handle this economically, ICBA, we poll our member companies, 51% said they think the NDP government's on the wrong track with the economy. Only 8% said they think the NDP are doing the right things. So these are all worrisome signs, and I think a lot of people are taking a step back, a lot of business people, and saying, yikes, I need to make sure I've got money put away here. Got to make sure I'm ready for this economic winter that's coming, because the NDP policies are finally coming home to roost.
How do you feel about Green Party leader Elizabeth May's proposal to put in a robot tax? If a person is replaced by a robot, the company still has to pay the taxes that person would have paid.
Well, first, I have to give her a little bit of credit here. She's pretty much the only federal leader talking about the effects of automation on the economy. This is something that we're starting to talk about a lot in construction, in various industries across the economy. How do you respond to automation? What does it mean going forward? So you got to give her credit for that. No one else has really talked about that in this campaign. The problem is a robot tax is such a silly bureaucratic nightmare that it could never possibly be enforced. I mean, first of all, what defines a robot? You know, is the little kiosk, is the self-checkout kiosk at Walmart or the ordering kiosk at McDonald's, is that a robot? It's a computer, but, you know, how do you define a robot? Is a Roomba a robot? You know, if you used to have a housekeeper, but now you have a Roomba, you know, should that be charged? You know, if we go to self-driving cars, you know, are those robots? Should those be charged? There's all these different things in all sorts of different sectors. You just can't have this kind of blanket robot tax and expect it to work. However, we should absolutely be talking about how to do. We should absolutely be talking about how to do stuff on dealing with automation, making sure that there are jobs for our workforce in the future. Those are conversations worth having. I'm not sure Elizabeth May, though, is the one with enough creative solution or analysis skills to actually be leading it.
Well, I mean, I've heard in the U.S., once they bring in automated semi-trailer trucks, that could cost 3 to 5 million jobs. Obviously, those people are going to have to be retrained or refocused somewhere else if you don't want them just to become welfare recipients.
Well, that's exactly it. And that's why, you know, pure conservatives will often, you know, pure conservatives do not generally have a huge problem with the idea of a basic income, for example. Where conservatives fight the idea of basic income is the fact that you just can't trust government not to constantly tinker with it and pander to those people. Like, you know, it's a broader discussion. It's one that we'll be having for the next decade or so, but it's one that we need to get started sooner than later. Because, you know, at the same time, we have an aging workforce. We have people, you know, we don't have enough Gen Xers and millennials and Generation Z to replace the baby boomers and the older Generation Xers and now as they approach retirement. So, you know, there is that opportunity there, but at the same time, you got to make sure that there are jobs for folks to support their families with. So, yeah, it's a tough thing to talk about on a broad economic perspective because every industry is so different. Construction, for example, has been pretty slow to come to automation, whereas retail has been a lot quicker, especially on kiosks. Banks have been very quick. I mean, you know, when was the last time you were in a bank lineup? You know, automation has really changed that business model. So you got to look at what you can do to. It's hard to talk about it as an economy-wide solution. You almost have to go industry by industry and figure out what works best there.
Well, when it comes to construction automation, you can use 3D printing to build a house in a day. I've seen that done. So, you know, it is coming. It may be slower. Some people are using it to build high-rises. Wherever you have a continuous task, that's exactly the same over and over again. That's where automation, of course, does its best. However, in a lot of construction projects, it's unique. You need to have experienced eyeballs on the scene because they have to adjust and adapt as that project goes on, and that probably will never happen if you're just going to use robots, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, there is the need for that, the craftsmanship, so to speak, and all that. 3D printers are great. They do take up a lot of resources still. So, you know, it's not as widespread yet. Someday it might be. I mean, we all watch Star Trek and think of the replicators, which, you know, what is a replicator on Star Trek other than a fancy 3D printer? So we'll wait and see. I'm interested to see where it goes. We're having many of the construction organizations, including ours, have regular conferences and symposiums on technology and construction, where it's going, where it's headed. And like I said, it's been slow to start, but we're starting to see it a little bit more and more as we go along.
What about the struggles for BC business having to pay the highest gasoline prices in Canada or North America?
Yeah, still a huge concern. A bigger concern now, though, or a more immediate one, is people renewing their car insurance. That's adding to the cost of it. Especially younger people who, you know, rely on their car to work or drive a truck for a company. They are facing huge insurance increases. So, yeah, this government, they just love to heap on the cost. So they just keep going and going, and it's up to us to figure out a way to pay for it, I guess. That, I think, is what's contributing to a lot of the concern and angst that people are feeling over where the economy is headed.
Could you see people who have a teenage family moving out of BC because they just can't afford to do things like letting your kid drive the car to football practice or choir practice?
Well, look, I don't think it helps. I mean, we have a daughter who is 16. She has her L. We insured under the previous regime. But yeah, we're already talking about, like, what does this cost look like, 10 months from now, 9 months from now? How much more is it going to cost to have her insured? And the concern is that you'll actually price young people out of the market of driving. And look, driving's still an important skill. It's still an important thing to be able to do. Still something that employers look at outside of the very finite downtown Vancouver and certain pockets of British Columbia. Driving is an important thing that we want young people to learn. We should be looking for ways to make it reasonable. You compare what ICBC is gouging young drivers with here to what's happening in Alberta or Saskatchewan or across the country, and it is outrageous and sickening. Frankly, I think the NDP will be beaten up on this pretty good over the coming months, and David Eby deserves every smack he's going to take from the families who have to pay this.
Wasn't ICBC invented because families couldn't afford to pay private insurance for their teenagers?
I'll have to rely on your memory for that. It was formed just before I was born. But my understanding is, yes, there were certain pockets of drivers who weren't getting a fair deal, and Davy Barrett wanted to make sure they did. But now, I guess ICBC has lived long enough to become the villain. So, yeah, there are other models that work in other areas, highly regulated models of insurance that, make sure people get taken care of and get insurance, even if it's a little bit more costly, but certainly would be a lot fairer to everyone than the current government monopoly we have.
Well, Alberta, other provinces have private auto insurance. How come families there find it affordable to insure their teenagers?
Well, they do. It's much cheaper. That's why they find it affordable. But the problem we have here is you have the NDP who created ICBC. You have a bunch of apologists, and you have the ICBC's very powerful union constantly pushing on the public this horror story that, we'd all be, that grandma wouldn't get insurance, that your kid would pay millions of dollars in insurance, that you would be gouged by evil insurance companies, when, of course, it is absolutely not true. And most people who move here, the first thing they remark on is they can't believe how outrageous insurance costs are.
Is it time to scrap ICBC, write off the losses, and let private insurance back into British Columbia?
It was the time 20 years ago. It's still the time. It was the time 10 years ago. It was the time 5 years ago. It's the time to do it still. So, the sooner we get politicians out of the car insurance business, the better off British Columbians will be.
The worst words you can hear. We're the government. We're here to help.
Especially this NDP government. The only thing they're interested in helping is their own special interests. And that is a worrisome trend for a lot of businesses and a lot of families here in British Columbia.
Is there any concern that BC Liberal leader Andrew Wilkinson might be tarred with the same brush as Justin Trudeau? Because he has the Liberal tag.
Oh, well, I don't know. I think the BC Liberals have been around as a brand for long enough now that people realize the two are different. I thought you were going to give me a blackface question, like you were dropping a big bombshell or something. I don't think we're allowed to say that Trudeau was tarred with a brush, unless we say he did it himself.
He did it himself.
It is a self-inflicted wound.
Yeah.
No, I think he'll be fine. The brand's been around long enough now. I think most British Columbians realize it. And, the interesting to me is there are a lot of what you would call, blue liberals or, red Tories, people kind of in the middle between the liberal and the conservative voting blocks who kind of swing back and forth between the two. I'm curious what will happen in this federal election to those ones who care more about fiscal issues. I just don't know how, if you're a fiscal conservative at all, how you could possibly cast a vote for the free spending Justin Trudeau.
Jordan, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks for having me. My
guest has been Jordan Bateman, Vice President of Communications and Marketing for the Independent Contractors and Business Association. His website, icba.ca. If you have any questions for Jordan or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter @TalkDigitalNet. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.